I will post it also once you start it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Are we serving bagels?
Absolutely. But it's self-serve, so
Just the holes.
all right. So if I could ask everyone to please mute yourselves, I'm going to mute everyone, and I'm going to ask Rabbi Goldberg to unmute.
Okay.
Let's see here. I got to find Rabbi Goldberg. Oh, here you are. One second. There you go.
Okay, great. Thank you. Still waiting to when we can invent this technology for our shuls in person. Mute people and unmute people.
That's the one thing we'd love to have from the pulpit, right?
Exactly. Is this Facebooking on your page or on the shul page?
I have it on the shul page now.
Okay, great.
Do you see it?
I do. I got it now. Let's see.
All right, I think we'll wait just one more minute before we get started.
Sounds good.
That's a cool looking mic you have there.
Thank you. It's all about the mic, really. It doesn't matter what you say into it, as long as you look like a professional. You got a cool looking mic, you're good to go.
Yeah.
It's one of the rules of coronavirus, having a cool mic.
All right, so I think as people slowly roll in, maybe we should get started, Rabbi Goldberg.
Sounds good.
A good morning and a good Tvach Shavua Tov to you, Rabbi Goldberg, and to everyone that's listening. First of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to spend with me on a Sunday morning to have some brunch. I have to say it's a little bit earlier for me because I happen to be in California right now. My dad was in the hospital. Thank God he's out now, but I had to run over to help out Mom. And so Baruch Hashem, things seem to be a little bit more stable now. But it's great to be able to sit down with you and take some time and catch up with you. I should let everyone know, first of all, just a couple of housekeeping things. I appreciate the fact that BRS and Bayit are collaborating on this effort. From our end, we have a number of people that are big fans of yours, Rabbi Goldberg, and some of them who are snowbirds who come down to Florida during the cold Toronto winters and enjoy your shiurim. Some people who listen to your shiurim online regularly, and some people who are very few people who are former Boca people and now live in Toronto. That's a rarity, but one such person is a co-sponsor of today's dialogue. I want to thank Craig and Esther Berglass Gutman, for sponsoring our conversation today. So anyway, just wanted to let you know. And then also, I guess the only other thing I should let people know before we start schmoozing is that I'm going to call you Rabbi Goldberg, but I normally don't call you Rabbi Goldberg. I call you something else, right? And so, like, I mean, all joking aside, we usually refer to each other in more friendly terms because rabbis have to let their hair down when they're with their friends. So, but for today, because maybe other people are listening, maybe a few people are listening, so we should call each other by the names that our congregants know us as. I guess that would be appropriate, right?
Absolutely. Although I find you're letting your hair down insensitive to those who are follically challenged, but we can nevertheless try to be familiar with one another nonetheless. So
I never would have known, and I never would have been able to tell under that big yarmulke.
exactly,
Anyway,
it's gotten bigger the more challenged I've become.
so Rabbi Goldberg, how have you been, and how has life been treating you since over the last 3.5 months?
It's I've been well. First of all, it's an honor to be with you. I love you, Rabbi Karapkin. I think our shuls, of all the shuls in North America, have so much in common in our value system, our ideology, our diversity, our programming. So it's wonderful to be together and to do things together. And a special thank you to Craig and to Esther. Esther was a big part of the growth of Boca when she was here. And when I had the privilege of meeting Craig when she moved up there, instantly made a connection with him. And so I'm also grateful for their sponsorship this morning. And it's great to see them. How are we doing? We're doing like you. We're doing like everybody else. Every day we wake up to the new challenges of the day, and Florida seemed safe at first, and really tried to take precautions at first. Now we are in the country. We're kind of the hot spot of where it's spiking and exploding, and every day you're just trying to reassess and reevaluate where are you at and what should the policies be. And as rabbis, for us, it's complicated. We're trying to figure out for our own families, how do we regulate our own families? I would use the word govern, but that's a hopeless idea that we govern our own families. But I mean, I still have younger children at home, and how do you tell them, can you go out, play dates, no play dates, see people, don't see people, sit far away, don't sit far away? Are we hunkering down? Are you going out? So you're both trying to figure out and evaluate for the community at large, for ourselves, and then maybe we'll get to, you made a simcha early on in this that I'm still astounded by the level of Mesiras Nefesh, the sacrifice that you had to make, which is the ultimate parental sacrifice, to not physically be present at a simcha. And please God, we have a simcha coming up in August, and we are every day trying to figure out exactly. We've so far planned like 3 weddings, one in Florida, 2 in New York, all for the same couple. And it's 3 weeks out, and we haven't sent invitations yet because you got your A list, your B list, your C list, and you're waiting for every governor to wake up and decide what they're going to do. So the answer to your question in short is it depends on every day. Every day you're trying to self-regulate and remind ourselves that it's all in Hashem's hands, and whatever's meant to be is what's going to be.
Yeah. I just wanted you to know that, people think it was a big Mesiras Nefesh, a big sacrifice for my wife and I not to be at our son's wedding. But the truth is, when we were watching it on Zoom, there was maybe like 0.5% of sadness and 99.9% of big simcha. And I have to say, like this past Shabbos, it's my first time in California in 3.5 months. And I had lunch with and Friday night dinner with the young couple that got married. She's from Montreal. She hasn't been with her parents since this started. Her parents weren't there either. And the simcha that I have just seeing the kids married, sort of out, completely overshadows anything else. And so that's one of the things we should probably discuss is sort of like the philosophy behind what we've been through and how it's changed us, how it's transformed us both. Perhaps there's some really sad stories that we certainly know of, you and I both know of, and I know that you've had some losses personally in your own family, but also some of the silver linings that we can discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. So a big mazel tov to you. But I think that your reaction and your wife speak volumes about who you are and the sense of perspective that you have and your ability to connect in that way. It's complicated. And one of the unspoken things, maybe it's spoken a little bit, is we're going to wake up and we don't know when this ends and when the vaccine and if herd immunity or whatever is going to help us all turn a corner. And the Spanish flu was 7 years, God forbid. Hopefully this doesn't last that long. But at some point we're going to turn that corner, wake up and look back. And many people are going to have some, whether clinical level of PTSD or not rising to the clinical level, but wake up and say, oh my goodness, my son got married and I wasn't there. Oh my goodness, I lost a loved one and I had a tiny funeral and didn't really get to sit a shiva. Oh my goodness, I woke up and so much time has passed. Like, I said to my wife yesterday, I said, yesterday was July 11th. It feels like it's still the end of February, beginning of March, because there's 3-4 months of our lives that are sort of unaccounted for and went by in such an abnormal way. And you and I might be in the middle of our summer vacation by now. I'm opening my files for these parshios as I look at my parsha shir or whatever else I'm doing, and they're pretty empty because I never darshan on them. I never teach them. I'm usually away. It's the middle of the summer. So we're reorienting ourselves to time and to experience and to reaction in ways that I don't know any of us are fully processing as we're going through it. And we may wake up and there's a lot of work that will have to be done when we think it's in the rearview mirror, maybe when we're first beginning to process some of it. But I think it
Oh,
speaks
for
volumes to you
sure.
and your wife, the attitude that you had towards that wedding. It's amazing. I'm
Oh,
so
well,
glad that
thank
you
you.
got to be with them.
Listen, your simcha, I can guarantee you, your simcha is going to be amazing. Wherever it's going to be, it's not going to be a big Hollywood production, the wedding. It's going to be very on the QT. It's going to be very modest. And you want to know something? All of the people in your shul who love you so much are going to totally understand if they can't be there.
Right.
No one's going to be insulted. No one's going to feel bad. Everyone's just going to be happy for you. And that to me is a big win also.
Yeah.
You talk about the PTSD that some people are going to experience, and perhaps are going through right now. I can just imagine it right now. Art Scroll and Feldheim. There's going to be like tons of books that are going to be written about the stories of Corona, this is going to be. We're going to be living through this, like you say, years beyond what we've gone through. But as Rabbanim, I guess our role is to try and find all of the good and to lift people's spirits. How are you doing that? First of all, we have to lift our own spirits, and that in itself is not easy. What do you and your wife do to sort of lift your own spirits?
That's a great question. One of the things we try to do regularly is to remind one another of having perspective, of seeing things in context. And so if we'll begin to panic, let's say, about the simcha, we'll say, what a bracha that we're making this simcha. And we look at the general context of our lives, that our immediate family, we're all healthy. And thank God the shul is healthy and the livelihood, at least for now, but please God, will continue to be healthy. And you look at all of the good and you could look at what's missing of the uncertainty. You could look at the things that you see and that you know. And if we count the things that we see and we know, then we could be grateful for those and see the rest in a certain sense of context. And in the recovery community, and it's a phrase that I've taken from them and use often, is for myself, let alone in teaching, but let go, let God. That sometimes when you feel yourself beginning to tighten up and your breath becomes shallow and your blood pressure goes up, you just got to let go and let God and remind yourself that Hashem has a plan. So we're supposed to, at the end of this week, go to New York because we have to, now the wedding's going to be in New York. So we need to quarantine for 14 days in New York, legally, morally, ethically, safety. So we have a home, we have a house there, and we're going to all hunker down and quarantine for 14 days, but we got to get there. And we got to make sure that we get through this week so that we can get there. And every time you start to imagine all the things that could go wrong that would make that difficult, you just have to say, well, Hashem's got a plan. And if we can't go that way, it's like Waze. It will reroute us a different way. And if we don't get to that destination, then it's not the destination we were meant to get to, and we'll get to another destination. So we try to be mechazek one another with that. But I'll just end by telling you this distinction, I think, which is really important. There was a great article by a therapist in the LA Times several years ago about the concept of the concentric circles and comforting in and dumping out. The notion that at the center of a circle is the person going through something, and anyone who's in a version of an outer circle, it could be family, friends, acquaintances, associates, all you can do is comfort in, and any dumping you feel you need to do is out. So let's say you have someone that who, God forbid, is terminally ill, and you feel terrible. You don't call the spouse of the terminally ill person and dump on them. All you do is comfort them. If you have to dump about how that's impacting you, you have to do to an outer circle, somebody who's even less friendly, more of an acquaintance. So I think it's a really applicable to this too, is that people going through these challenges, it's up to everyone to have their own perspective. Our job is we shouldn't be lecturing them about, well, at least you have all these other things going well, and this is what Hashem wants for you, and so on and so forth. That's for everyone to determine for themselves. It's not for us to lecture others about. Our job is just to validate other people, how hard it is, and for each person on their own to give themselves that little pep talk about this is God's plan. So that's one of the things and I know you and I have another common denominator, We can't listen to music during the 3 weeks, Rosh Hashem's heter aside, but you can listen to comedy. I know that another thing you and I have in common among so many others is that we de-stress by listening to comedy. So I still am doing that when I get a chance. I just play some comedy. Laughter is the best medicine.
Oh, it sure is. It sure is. But there's, like you say, it's a delicate balance, because if we get on the screen, on the Zoom screen, and we say everything is great, then we're being insensitive to the people who are really going through a very difficult time.
Right.
But at the same time, if we give into that gloom and doom, so then we may not be sufficiently playing the role of manhig to be able to lift people's spirits. So it is a delicate balance.
Can I ask you a
And
question? Once you were on that Zoom with the wedding, you described that you felt 99% simcha. But leading up to it, when it first struck you, the realization that you weren't physically going to be there, how did you cope with it then?
Well, the truth is, I had a ticket to go on Air Canada, which I actually was able to use now to visit my parents' side. They gave us a credit. But I had a ticket to fly, and I canceled it literally hours before I was supposed to fly, the day before the wedding. My wife, that was the way I guess I coped with it psychologically, was knowing that even when the window of hope was getting narrower and narrower, I still held on to the hope that I would still be able to make it. It was only after my wife, my kids, both here, both in LA and in Toronto, begged me not to come and begged me not to go, that I sort of had to cancel the ticket. But that was, I guess, the way to cope with it, is always to have that glimmer of hope, to know that there's always a possibility. And then when it became clear that I wasn't going to go, so then I said, okay, this is the Ratzon Hashem, like you mentioned before. You have to let go at some point. And that's, for me, this was a Musar Haskel, that we're not in the driver's seat. As much as we think we're in control of life, if a little tiny bug that is so microscopic that we can't even see has been able to put life and society, all of civilization, at a standstill, that's almost like the story of Titus that we're going to read about on Tisha B'Av, about the little gnat that flew into the ear of Titus, or up his nose, and completely paralyzed the world's most powerful leader, who brought the Jewish people in Jerusalem to its knees. But God basically says, even you're not in control.
Right.
And that to me was, the more we live, the more gray our hairs get, the more wise we become to the fact that we're really not in control of what's going on in life.
Right. I think that is definitely one of the big takeaways. I hope that it humbles all of us, that every day we wake up and we do our best. And once we've done our best, let go, because there's less predictable than ever, things we can less control than ever. And that should hopefully humble all of us and put us in a certain context.
Let me ask you, how are you, do you find it challenging to keep the community together and to keep BRS as a relevant entity in people's lives? I'm finding that, that challenge, I think for some people more so, for some people less so. And how are you maintaining contact with everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an enormous challenge. We've talked about it. How do you define community when you can't have campus or congregation? Right? The core of a congregation is congregating. A Beis Knesset is a place that you come to be together. And here, even we are back indoors, but in incredibly limited fashion and designed for no congregating. Everyone's 10 feet apart. You walk right in, no shared surface. You don't share a handle, and you can't say hello. If you say hello, security's been instructed essentially to shoot. If you lower your mask, then you're done. So so the whole definition of what for so many people, what the shul represents, the campus is a place of warmth and congregation and love and interaction and socializing and belonging and all the things that are missing in our lives in so many other ways. We are operating without any of that. So how do you create community in a way that you can't have campus or congregation? I think is the magic question we're all struggling with. Not only for now, we'll see how long it's going to continue with. So, like so many others over Zoom, we're trying to create conversations like this that people can see us a little bit unplugged. We realized early on that one of the challenges was all the access to the rabbis was through formal teaching and learning, Zoom shiurim and classes and just lecturing. So we early on, a few of the rabbis started, we called it Coffee Talk. It's now morphed into Behind the Bima, this podcast we have on Wednesday nights. And the whole idea is we're just unplugged. We're just schmoozing. And it's what we used to do when we'd see you after shul or at the kiddush or in the hallway or after the class. And now all that's been taken from us. So we got to do it virtually, and we have to do it in a larger scale. But that's why things like this are great. And I'm so grateful to you for putting this together this morning, or that podcast. And I know some rabbis are doing that kind of thing. So we expanded our bulletin. Someone gave us a great idea, which was we have access to people at a time that we're not competing for their attention, which is Shabbos. Shabbos, there is no technology and there is no connection. There is no distraction and there's no competition. So we have people's attention. So we took our regular weekly bulletin, and instead of scaling it back, we actually expanded it. And we added several human interest sections to it. So we've had every week a Heroes on the Front Lines, and we feature different doctors, nurses, our security guards, the people who've been on the front lines throughout this episode. We have featured different stars of BRS who play certain roles. We've featured interviews with Bar and Bat Mitzvah who've celebrated in this fashion. We've done all kinds of human interest components and expanded it with articles. We've recruited young people to be the writers of our BRS Weekly, and we spend money. It's not simple, but we actually have it delivered to our members throughout Montoya Circle. So today,
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah, today arguably you could pick it up, but for a long time we had to have it delivered. So Shabbos, when we have someone's attention and not competing, BRS, the brand and its value system, hopefully is still involved in every home, because people are reading our articles and our ideas and our human interests and our programs and what we stand for.
Great.
What are you finding that's working?
Well, a lot. What I started recently was I try to have something going on every Sunday morning, because I figured that Sunday mornings people are chilled and they don't have that much going on. They're still just rolling out of bed, waking up.
Right.
Most of us are not wearing a tie, just the rabbis are, and so it's a good time to have something going on. I started a series called the stories, the people of the Bayit and their really interesting stories. So I started that last Sunday, and we had really fascinating conversation with a couple which is biracial in our shul, and just an amazing couple who are doing great things and are walking Kiddush Hashem.
I watched part of it. Really compelling.
Oh, really? Yeah. And then the next week we're going to have a couple where the husband is gone for most of the year because he's a chaplain in the Canadian Air Force. With his long beard, and he's gonna. So what I've discovered is this is an interesting time to highlight the members of our own community and let people know that sometimes the people that we've been davening with and sitting next to, and we don't even know their names because we're self-conscious about interacting, because maybe we're worried about rejection and whatever it is. There are ways to introduce people to each other using these kinds of venues. And then I always thought that emails from the shul were a burden on people, that we should sort of be minimalists and pull back on the way that we communicate with the members of our shul. But right. I think, like you said, now is the time when we have to bombard people, showing them that we haven't forgotten about you. You are important to us, and we care about you. So we have a daily email, and we have an extra large Friday email. And we're trying to up our game with the bulletin. It just hasn't been easy because our staff was sort of shell-shocked at the beginning, trying to figure out how to get things right. So we are working on upping our game on the bulletin as well. But that's a great thing that you did to deliver it to everyone. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's been working out.
Yeah. So and what are you doing about
or a living room? Frankly, the people who are going to drop out, I think we're going to make membership mean a lot more. So if you've decided that your Judaism could live in a driveway and you don't want